Happy Trans Awareness Month. Trans Awareness Month is held every November. It's a time to honor trans people and educate each other about trans issues. In this video, in partnership with Amida Care, I'll be discussing trans masculine issues in healthcare, including hormone therapy, gender-affirming surgery, gynecology and mammograms, and finally, advice to healthcare providers to better care for the trans masculine community. My name's Tony, my pronouns are he, him, and I identify on the trans masculine spectrum. Trans masculine folks can identify as trans men, can also be non-binary, and we're assigned female at birth, but we don't identify with that gender. In this video, I'll talk about my experiences as a trans masculine person dealing with healthcare providers, along with two other folks who identify as being on the trans masculine spectrum. One of the first steps when trans masculine people begin their transition is to begin testosterone in order to cure our dysphoria and masculinize our bodies. When I first began my transition in 2011, I saw a doctor in order to start testosterone. One of the issues I faced was that I never got clear information about what my ideal testosterone levels will be. And that included going to endocrinologists who really had no familiarity with trans masculine people. This presents a lot of issues. There are also other issues that trans masculine people face when beginning their hormone therapy.
So I live in New York City, which is a city of convenience, you would think. I've heard a lot of horror stories where in the Midwest, a lot of trans people get their prescriptions, they go to a pharmacy, then the pharmacist says, sorry, we can't give this to you, I don't think it's for you. Well, it is, it's testosterone, it's mine, it's been prescribed to me. However, I didn't have an issue with testosterone. I have had issues with needles, which is weird to say, in a city that is so accessible and always has resources. I used to get my needles from my doctor's office, which has a pharmacy attached. So easy, you can get 10 a day. We have this program here in New York City called the Needles Exchange Program, which makes it easier for people who take hormones, drugs, or perhaps need it for their medications to go and get 10 free needles a day so that they have clean needles to use so you aren't spreading diseases. Well, I go to a regular pharmacy on the street that's not my doctor's pharmacy and I ask for 10 needles. I get looks, I get questioned. Why do you need these needles? You're not supposed to ask anything. The program is free and it's anonymous. And I had so much pushback at this one pharmacy. I was so pissed off. I just walked out and said, you know what? There's a reason why I go to the pharmacy at my doctor's office. It's hella inconvenient, but it's honestly the only place where no one's gonna question why you need these needles. No one's gonna judge you for taking hormones, for being prescribed testosterone, estrogen, whatever it may be.
After beginning testosterone therapy, many trans masculine people elect to have gender-affirming surgery. This can come with its own challenges, including getting healthcare to cover these gender-affirming surgeries and accessing the proper post-op care.
So a lot of people don't realize that in order to get your surgeries covered by your health insurance, you need to meet a certain amount of requirements set by WPATH. WPATH was initially founded by Dr. Harry Benjamin, the pioneer of the trans health movement in Germany during Nazi Germany, 1930s and 1940s. So anyway, I'm going to go get top surgery, sadly in Florida, we'll talk about that a different day. I'm going to go get top surgery and I wanted my surgery to be covered by my health insurance. Well, my health insurance says, well, you've got to take T. You've got to live as a man for a year. I think it was 2 at that time. You've got to identify as a man at work. I'm non-binary, so this is already problematic. You've got to go to therapy for 6 to 7 months. I'm like, dudes, I just want to have surgery. Like, I know that I need to have surgery. I've known this for years. Why are you making me go through hoops and jumping through every single goddamn gatekeeping thing to get this covered? Excuse my language. But finally, I meet some of the requirements and I get to health insurance and they say to me, oh yeah, we're only gonna cover 60% of your surgery. So I do some calculating. Okay, if I cover this with my own money and maybe a little bit of loans, versa getting this covered by health insurance, and by the way, it's not guaranteed that it's covered, you have to get it reimbursed. 60% plus what I have to pay out of pocket turned out to be a $400 difference. Why am I getting this reimbursed? And I'm not even sure if I'm gonna get it reimbursed. I'm just gonna pay out of pocket because you're not gonna cover this anyway since I'm not taking T. I took T after I started surgery. I am not a man, I identify as non-binary, but because you desperately want me to be a man at work, okay, I'll do that. It was just like so aggravating to like finally meet these requirements only to be told, well, actually, we're not going to cover all of it, and it still wasn't enough, and maybe we won't actually pay for it, then what is the point? It was really aggravating at the end of the day. But you know what? I'm happy I had my surgery.
Many trans masculine people have to go to see a gynecologist and also to get a mammogram. However, when they're at these offices, it's really uncomfortable. When I was seeking a hysterectomy, I remember all of the women there were looking at me really, really weird. Why is this guy here? So that made me feel really uncomfortable. And oftentimes, in order to get a hysterectomy covered, you have to keep the female F label on your health insurance, which is not the best. And I also remember getting a mammogram to try and prevent and detect breast cancer and feeling really, really uncomfortable about it.
When I was able to access the hysterectomy, I was going with what my peers were telling me in my trans community at the time, to not change my gender on, my ID or anything like that, because the health insurance would not cover it. So when I saw this doctor in the field in New York City, she told me that I was misinformed and my health insurance would not cover me because I would be deemed healthy, and that I had to change my gender marker as male, as my authentic self. And that's what I did, and then I was able to get that covered fully by my insurance. So even within the community, there is a great deal of misinformation.
So now that we know the issues that affect trans masculine people when it comes to healthcare, what can healthcare providers do to better care for our community? Well, we'll start with name and pronouns. Don't ever assume a trans masculine person's name. They might have a name that's different than their legal name, and don't assume pronouns. That's step one. Create a welcoming environment in your waiting room as well, especially if you see a trans masculine person at a gynecology office or trying to get a mammogram. When it comes to surgery and post-op care, help trans people, especially trans masculine people, navigate how to properly have their gender markers on their health insurance so that their procedures are covered. And also just help check in with us, ask us what our healthcare needs are and how you can address them. Those basic fundamental things can come a long way when you're a healthcare provider.